Part 1. Have you ever wanted something so badly you could taste it? A career, a relationship, a certain kind of life? A dream that feels so deeply, so authentically yours that it forms the very core of your identity. It is the engine that drives you, the star that guides you through sacrifice and struggle. Now, I want you to hold that feeling and ask yourself a terrifying question. What if that dream was never yours to begin with? What if the most powerful, most intimate force in your life, your own ambition, was carefully, skillfully, and invisibly engineered by someone else for their own purposes? This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a profound philosophical secret, a scary idea known as false consciousness. It is the proposition that the beliefs, values, and aspirations you hold most dear might not be the product of your own free will, but rather a sophisticated architecture of control designed to keep you compliant, productive, and unaware of the very chains that bind you. Today, we journey into the heart of this idea. We will ask the question that few dare to entertain. Are we the masters of our own minds, or are we merely puppets in a grand play we don't even know we are in? Part 2. We live in a paradox. We are told we are freer than any generation in history. We have an endless buffet of choices: what to believe, who to be, what to consume, what to desire. And yet, for so many, this supposed freedom feels like a gilded cage. It is accompanied by a pervasive hum of anxiety, a culture of burnout, and a deep, gnawing sense of unfulfillment. To understand the lock on this cage, we must first examine its bars. The first bar is the modern ideology that has been elevated to a quasi-religious status, the cult of hustle. This is not merely the Protestant work ethic of our grandparents. Hustle culture is an all-consuming belief system where your productivity is your identity, and your self-worth is measured by your output. The slogans are everywhere: rise and grind, team no sleep, maximize productivity. We are told that to be successful, we must emulate the tech billionaires who sacrificed everything for their enterprise, believing that the average person can achieve the same outcome if they just work relentlessly enough. This ideology is insidious because it colonizes every corner of our lives. Hobbies are no longer for rest. They become side hustles. Leisure must be optimized. Our passions are tampered with a need to be a good hobbyist, to add a new skill to our repertoire, inadvertently marketing ourselves for the workforce even in our moments of play. It is a state of false leisure, where every passing second is framed by its relative efficiency, and to be unproductive is to be a failed human being. We are told to rise and grind, but we feel ourselves being ground down into a state of perpetual anxiety, apathy, and guilt for the simple act of resting. The second bar of the cage is the foundational myth that makes the hustle seem worthwhile: the myth of meritocracy. This is the story, most famously articulated as the American dream, that hard work and determination alone are the keys to success, regardless of the circumstances of one's birth. It is an inspiring tale, and it feels just, but it is largely a fantasy. Overwhelming evidence shows that structural barriers, the class you are born into, the quality of your education, your social and financial capital, are far more accurate predictors of life outcomes than individual effort. Studies have repeatedly shown that only a tiny percentage of those born on the lowest rungs of the economic ladder ever ascend to the highest. The psychological effect of this myth is devastating. It creates what the writer John Steinbeck once observed as a nation of temporarily embarrassed millionaires, people who defend a system that actively disadvantages them, because they believe they will one day be its beneficiaries. For the few who succeed, the myth of meritocracy breeds entitlement. For the many who struggle, it breeds shame. It shifts the blame for systemic failure onto the individual, whispering that if you are not succeeding, it is because you are not smart enough, dedicated enough, or you simply did not try hard enough. These two ideologies, hustle and meritocracy, work in perfect, brutal harmony. One tells you the game is fundamentally fair, the other tells you that you must play it with every ounce of your being. This creates a population in a state of anxious compliance, running faster and faster on a wheel, blaming themselves when they stumble. And the fuel for this anxiety? Debt. As of early 2025, total household debt in the United States has reached a record high of over $18 trillion, with the average household owing over $105,000. Nearly half of Americans have no retirement savings, and 40% have no money left after paying their monthly bills. Young adults are particularly burdened, with 1 in 6 experiencing trouble repaying debts, and over a third facing food insecurity. This is the modern puzzle. Why do we willingly, even enthusiastically, participate in a system that leaves so many of us exhausted, indebted, and feeling like failures? Why do we internalize systemic problems as personal flaws? To answer this, we must turn to a thinker who drew the blueprint of this gilded cage over 150 years ago. Part 3. To solve the puzzle of our modern condition, we must turn to one of history's most controversial and misunderstood thinkers. Not as a prophet or a politician, but as a master diagnostician. A man who, in the 19th century, drew a map of the invisible prison we now inhabit. His name was Karl Marx. Marx's profound insight begins with a simple but revolutionary model of society. He asked us to imagine society as a building. The foundation of this building he called the base. The structure erected on top he called the superstructure. The base is the economic engine of society. It is composed of two things: the means of production, the factories, tools, land, and technology used to create the things we need, and the relations of production, the social structure of who owns those things and who works for them. In a capitalist society, the base is defined by a small class, the bourgeoisie, owning the means of production, and a much larger class, the proletariat, owning nothing but their ability to work, which they must sell for a wage. The superstructure is everything else built upon that economic foundation. Our legal system, our political structures, our media, our family structures, our religion, and, most importantly for our journey, our ideology. Here is the crucial point that unlocks everything. The superstructure is not neutral. Its primary function is to reinforce, protect, and legitimize the economic arrangements of the base. The laws, the culture, the dominant ideas, they all work, consciously or unconsciously, to make the existing power structure seem natural, inevitable, and just. As Marx and his collaborator Friedrich Engels famously wrote in The German Ideology, the ideas of the ruling class are in every epoch the ruling ideas. The class that controls material production also controls mental production. This is where the concept of ideology becomes the operating system of society. For Marx, ideology is not just a set of political beliefs. It is the entire universe of norms, values, and ideas that we absorb as common sense, as simply the way the world works. It's the invisible water we swim in. Marx upended centuries of philosophy by arguing that our material reality shapes our ideas, not the other way around. As he put it, life is not determined by consciousness, but consciousness by life. The way we organize ourselves to produce and survive determines how we think, what we value, and what we dream of. Now we can give a name to the ghost in our machine: false consciousness. Although Marx himself never used this exact two-word phrase, his work is the foundation of the concept. The term was first coined in a letter by Engels 10 years after Marx's death, referring to a thinker's failure to recognize the true motive forces behind their own ideas. It was later developed by thinkers like György Lukács and Antonio Gramsci, who gave us the idea of cultural hegemony, the process by which the dominant class makes its worldview seem like the natural order for everyone. False consciousness is what happens when the ideology of the superstructure, which serves the interests of the ruling class, is internalized by the working class as their own. It is a systematic misrepresentation of reality that conceals the true nature of exploitation. It leads people to act against their own objective interests because they see the world through a lens crafted by those who benefit from their compliance. This isn't to say people are foolish. The critique that this idea is elitist misses the point. Marx's analysis is more profound. The illusion is not just a subjective mistake in your head, it is an objective feature of the system itself. The system requires this blindness to function. It is a social reality that, as the philosopher Slavoj Žižek notes, implies the non-knowledge of its participants as to its essence. You aren't dumb for believing in the meritocracy myth. You are correctly performing a role that the system needs you to play. So how does this grand illusion work in practice? Marx identified a key mechanism, a kind of magic trick at the heart of capitalism: commodity fetishism. Think of your smartphone. You see it as an object. You desire it for its brand, its features, its sleek design. It has a price, a value that seems inherent to it. This is the fetish. What this act of seeing obscures, what it makes completely invisible, is the vast, sprawling network of human social relationships that brought that object into being. We don't see the miner in the Congo, the worker in a Shenzhen factory, the programmer in California, the logistics driver, the retail employee. All of that human labor, all of those social power dynamics disappear. All we see is a relationship between ourself and a desirable thing. This mystification, as Marx called it, transforms the social relations between people into what look like material relations between things. The economic system no longer appears as a set of choices made by human beings, a system that could be changed, but as a natural, objective reality, like gravity. This is the magic trick that keeps the cage locked from the inside. But if false consciousness is the sickness, Marx also identified the cure. He called it class consciousness. This is the awakening, the moment the spell breaks. It is the profound shift from seeing yourself as an isolated individual in competition with everyone else to understanding yourself as part of a collective class with shared experiences and shared interests. It's the transition from thinking, I am failing because I didn't hustle hard enough, to realizing we are all struggling because the system is designed to funnel wealth upwards. This realization, this achievement of a true perspective, is the first and most crucial step toward any possibility of genuine change. Part 4. Armed with Marx's analytical toolkit, Base and Superstructure, Ideology and False Consciousness, we can now return to the confusing landscape of the modern world and see the hidden architecture with stunning clarity. The puzzles of Part 2 are no longer puzzles. They are textbook examples of a system working exactly as designed. Let's begin with our first case study, the powerful cultural narrative embodied in the film The Pursuit of Happiness. On the surface, it is an inspiring story of a man who overcomes impossible odds through sheer grit and intelligence. It is the meritocracy myth perfectly crystallized. But through a Marxist lens, it reveals itself as a masterful piece of superstructural propaganda. The film relentlessly focuses on Chris Gardner's individual struggle, making his eventual success feel like a purely personal victory. What it masterfully ignores are the systemic failures of the base that create his predicament in the first place. A healthcare system that produces expensive, hard-to-sell gadgets, a housing market that allows a working father and son to become homeless, and a labor market that normalizes exploitation. The most glaring example is the unpaid internship at a prestigious stock brokerage. This is, by definition, the exploitation of labor. The company extracts value from a group of hungry candidates without compensation, promising a single job as the prize. Yet the film frames this not as exploitation, but as a noble, life-changing opportunity. The message is clear and powerful. Your suffering is a test of your individual worth. The film reinforces false consciousness by presenting a one-in-a-million exception as the rule, teaching audiences to admire the hustle and blame themselves for their poverty, rather than questioning the system that produces it. Our second case study is even more direct. The invention of the diamond engagement ring. Before the 1930s, diamond engagement rings were not a widespread tradition. They were a luxury for the elite. The material base was this. The De Beers cartel controlled the global diamond supply and, facing a market collapse after the Great Depression, needed to sell vast quantities of a common, carbon-based stone at an artificially high price. The problem was a lack of demand. So, they engineered it. De Beers hired the N.W. Ayer advertising agency in 1947 to construct a superstructure. The agency's goal was not to sell a product, but to invent a tradition. They brilliantly linked the diamond's physical durability to the abstract ideal of eternal romantic love. This culminated in 4 simple words written by copywriter Francis Garrity. A diamond is forever. This slogan was a work of ideological genius. It wasn't just about love, it was a subconscious command to never resell the diamond, which would flood the market and reveal their true, non-rare value, causing the price to collapse. Through movies, magazines, and celebrity endorsements, De Beers manufactured a cultural norm out of thin air, even inventing the rule that a man should spend 1 to 2 months' salary on the ring. This is a perfect, contained example of the base determining the superstructure. An economic need of the ruling class created a cultural truth that now feels timeless, binding millions to a ritual of consumption they believe is an authentic expression of love. Finally, let's look at the politics of distraction. Consider a slogan like "Make America Great Again." From a Marxist perspective, this is a powerful tool for channeling legitimate class anger in a harmless direction. The slogan taps into the real economic anxieties of a working class that has seen its prospects decline. But it cleverly redefines the source of the problem. The enemy is not the economic base, the corporate decisions, globalization policies, and capital flight that hollowed out industries. Instead, the superstructure, political rhetoric, and media directs that anger horizontally, blaming scapegoats like immigrants, foreign countries, or a vaguely defined cultural elite. This is a modern version of the exact tactic Marx observed in the 1870s, when English capitalists used the press and pulpit to stoke animosity between English and Irish workers, preventing them from uniting against their common oppressors. Today, the delivery mechanism for this ideology is the modern media funhouse. Social media algorithms create powerful echo chambers and filter bubbles, ensuring that users are primarily exposed to content that confirms their existing biases. One study found that a person's potential exposure to views that challenge their own is as low as 24%. This insulates the ideology from rebuttal, deepens polarization, and keeps the working and middle classes fighting amongst themselves, too distracted to look up and question who truly holds power. These 3 examples reveal the sophistication of false consciousness. It's not one single lie. It is a diverse portfolio of ideological tools. Some are inspirational, like the pursuit of happiness, channeling our hope into individual struggle. Some are aspirational, like De Beers, channeling our desire for love into consumption. And some are grievance-based, like political slogans, channeling our anger at scapegoats. Each is tailored to a different emotional market, but all serve the same ultimate function: to protect the economic base and ensure that the system reproduces itself with our willing participation. Part 5. To see the architecture of the cage is a disorienting and perhaps disheartening experience. It can feel as though we are hopelessly trapped. But the philosopher who drew the map of the prison also believed in the possibility of escape. Seeing the bars is the first essential step to dismantling them. The diagnosis is not a death sentence. It is a call to awaken. And thankfully, we have been left with powerful tools for this awakening. one for our society and one for our soul. The first tool comes from the Brazilian educator and philosopher Paulo Freire, who built upon Marx's work to create a pedagogy for liberation. He gave us the concept of conscientização, or critical consciousness. This is the direct antidote to false consciousness. Freire described it as the process of moving from a state of naive consciousness, where we passively accept the world and its myths as they are given to us, to a state of critical consciousness, where we begin to question, analyze, and see the social and political contradictions that shape our reality. For Freire, this was not a passive academic exercise. It is praxis, the dynamic and inseparable unity of critical reflection and committed action. It begins when we start asking simple questions about the common sense beliefs we hold. Why do we value this? Who benefits from this idea? Is this truth serving me, or is it serving a system I did not choose? While Freire gives us the collective framework for social analysis, another ancient tradition gives us a shield for personal resilience. Stoicism. In a world designed to manipulate your emotions, to make you desire what you don't have and fear what you can't control, Stoicism offers a radical form of inner freedom. The core practice is the dichotomy of control, relentlessly distinguishing between what is truly up to you and what is not. Your thoughts, your judgments, your choices, these are yours. Everything else, the ads you see, the news headlines, the opinions of others, the state of the economy, is external. You can observe these things, but you do not have to internalize them. By mastering your inner world, you build a fortress of tranquility. You can see a manipulative advertisement without absorbing its manufactured desire. You can witness a divisive political spectacle without being consumed by its manufactured rage. This is not apathy. It is the cultivation of the clear-headedness required for wise action. Here, then, is the path forward. Marx gives us the diagnosis. Freire gives us the method for a collective, critical awakening. And Stoicism gives us the personal, psychological strength to undertake that journey without succumbing to despair or being hijacked by the very emotions the system uses to control us. The journey out of false consciousness is not about rejecting all beliefs, but about earning them. It is the slow, deliberate, and sometimes difficult process of examining the ideas you have inherited and deciding, for yourself, which ones are worthy of you. It is the transition from being a character in a story written by others to becoming the author of your own. The most radical act in a world of manufactured beliefs is to have a thought that is truly your own. The question is, which one will be your first?